They thought they had everything covered. Steel doors that weighed tons, locks coded in 6 layers of encryption, cameras that tracked every angle, every shadow, every movement, men armed to the teeth, stationed at every hallway, every corner, every blind spot. They thought they planned for everything, but they never planned for me. See, the funny thing about security is this: the more complicated it gets, the more fragile it becomes. They add more codes, more wires, more eyes in the ceiling. And in doing so, they forget the simplest truth. Systems don't collapse when you hit them with force. They collapse when you hit them with irony. And irony wears a smile. So I walked in, not with an army, not with a weapon, not with some flashy Hollywood explosion. No, just a smile. And the moment I smiled, something cracked. Not the walls, not the circuits. Something far more delicate. Their belief. See, that's the real firewall. The thing no manual ever writes down. The thing no programmer can code. Belief. The belief that the system works. The belief that the lock will hold. The belief that the man at the monitor is still in control. And when I smiled, that belief shut down first. The operators froze. They blinked at their screens, swore the cameras were lying. A few thought it was a glitch, a reflection, a trick of the light. But it wasn't. It was me. And it was real. That's the kind of breach you don't plan for. Because no engineer has ever written, "Warning, this system collapses if the intruder enjoys himself too much." The alarms didn't trigger. The codes didn't scramble. The locks didn't jam. Not yet. Those things came later. What came first was silence. You know what silence does in a room full of guards. It kills faster than bullets. 1 second they're shouting commands, barking orders, moving like machines. The next second they hear nothing. And when a man who trusts machines hears nothing, he stops trusting everything. I didn't break their system. I erased it, not by force, not by code, but by reminding them that the strongest wall in the world still cracks if you laugh at it. And so I did. I laughed, I grinned, I smiled until the whole room turned into a graveyard of blinking lights and frozen screens. That was the breach nobody planned for. Not the man with the gun, not the code breaker with the laptop, not the saboteur crawling through ducts. A smile. The real virus wasn't in their wires, it was in their heads. It spread faster than any malware. Faster than fire, and by the time the first lock actually failed, the truth had already settled in their bones. They weren't safe. They were never safe. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the moment the system collapsed. Not because I broke in, but because I was already inside. They built their kingdom on visibility. Red lights blinking, screens recording. Doors sealed with codes only they believed were unbreakable. They thought the eye was the ultimate weapon, that if they could see everything, they could control everything. But shadows don't obey cameras. And you're not a figure to track. You're an absence. A smile that doesn't register. A grin that doesn't ping on their precious algorithms. Do you know what it looks like when their walls start to twitch? When their beloved security screens suddenly stutter, static chewing through their certainties, faces blurred, doors unlocked, red lights dimming to black. That moment, when technology realizes it isn't failing, it's surrendering. They told themselves, if it can be seen, it can be stopped. But what happens when the unseen chooses to laugh in their face? What happens when a smile bends the rules of recognition? No pattern, no match, no code that aligns with logic. You can almost hear the panic in their rooms. operators slamming buttons, analysts screaming, check the feed again. But the feed, well, the feed has chosen sides. Every click they make just circles back to nothingness. Every desperate reboot just makes the static louder. It's not the machine glitching, it's the machine laughing, because your presence rewrites the rules, and your smile isn't decoration, it's sabotage, it's disobedience carved into expression. It's the one thing they could never code into compliance. You see, visibility is their religion. They bow to cameras, pray to firewalls, confess to passwords, every angle, every lens, every lock, all to ensure the shadows never turn against them. But you're the shadow that decided it had a face that mocks their obsession with control, and suddenly, every light they left on feels like a curse. Every angle they thought was covered feels like an exposed throat. Picture it, a room filled with monitors, all flashing warnings, doors they swore shut, wide open, security guards staring at screens like they're seeing ghosts, and somewhere, in the back of their skulls, a creeping whisper, "This isn't failure, this is theater." That's the part they'll never admit. The collapse isn't technical, it's psychological. They don't fear the glitch, they fear the grin behind it. They don't fear the static, they fear the smile that caused it. You turned their empire of vision into blindness, not by cutting wires, not by breaking locks, but by showing up, by existing in the one shape their systems couldn't name. They can't track what doesn't care to be tracked. They can't control what laughs at control, and they can't erase the image that never appeared on their screens in the first place. So when the cameras go dark, when the alarms stay silent, when the monitors choke on static, they'll know the shadow they feared most never needed to hide. It only needed to smile. Their greatest mistake was never the doors they built. It wasn't the steel, it wasn't the alarms, it wasn't the guards with their shiny badges and trembling hands. No, their greatest mistake was believing you would walk up politely and knock, because you don't knock, you don't wait for permission, you don't even play by the rules of entry and exit. You bend the rules until they don't exist anymore. Fear, that's the real virus. It spreads quicker than any breach, quieter than any lockpick, more lethal than any weapon. And once it infects their minds, they don't guard the doors anymore. They open them, for you, for your smile, for the shadow that terrifies them more than any bullet. Think about it. What's stronger, a door bolted shut, or the guard who forgets why it's bolted in the first place? You don't need to touch a lock if everyone guarding it forgets what they're guarding. That's the paradox. Fear doesn't need proof, it doesn't need evidence, it doesn't need you to do anything. Fear only needs your presence, and sometimes just a smile that crawls under their skin, a smile that scrambles their memory, a smile that makes them forget codes, procedures, passwords, because when you smile, their minds start racing with nightmares they can't explain, and nightmares are always louder than reality. The cameras, they don't see you anymore, they see static, shadows, illusions. The gods, they don't hear alarms anymore, they hear whispers, laughter, footsteps that don't exist. That's how the virus works. Fear is not an outsider, it's an insider. It's a traitor that betrays them from within. They keep telling themselves, don't panic, it's just a glitch, just a rumor, just a shadow. But panic is the one thing that doesn't listen to orders. Panic listens only to imagination, and imagination always paints you bigger, darker, louder than reality ever could. Every soldier, every officer, every so-called protector of their system is only as strong as their nerves, and nerves snap quicker than wires, so they build stronger locks, higher fences, smarter codes, but all that strength crumbles when one smile can send a tremor through their bones. Fear doesn't need a weapon. Fear is the weapon, and the beauty of it, it's invisible. You can't track it. You can't shoot it. You can't lock it out. It lives inside them. The moment your presence slithers into their heads, they stop being guardians. They become victims, not of you, but of their own minds. Look at them now, eyes wide, hands sweating, every sound magnified, every flicker of light a threat, every shadow your face, every silence your laugh. Do you see it? They aren't protecting the system anymore. They're dismantling it themselves, opening doors, lowering defenses, turning keys with shaking fingers. And for what? For a smile that didn't even touch the lock. That's the paradox. The stronger their walls, the weaker their minds, the tighter their grip, the quicker it slips, the louder they shout control, the more chaos takes root. You don't invade, you infect. You don't destroy, you distort. You don't attack the door, you attack the thought of the door. And once that thought collapses, there is no door left to guard, because fear opens from the inside. Billions, they poured billions into their systems, firewalls thicker than castle walls, encryption layered like steel coffins, AI surveillance humming like an omniscient god, always watching, always listening, always failing. And the punchline, it fails in silence. No alarms, no flashing red sirens, just a quiet collapse, the kind you don't notice until it's too late. They thought mathematics was stronger than madness. They thought algorithms could outsmart a grin. They thought cold logic would protect them from fire. But all that code, every single line, turns into an open door the moment I arrive. Because code is predictable. I'm not. Code is built on rules. I'm the one who breaks them. And what's more terrifying than a system that doesn't even know what it's fighting? You've seen it. Screens flickering into static, cameras looping empty corridors, AI whispering warnings that no one hears. They don't understand. You don't defeat me with surveillance. You feed me. You give me mirrors to twist, machines to corrupt, codes to rewrite into hymns of chaos. Their billions became my playground. Their engineers became my clowns. Every firewall, a paper door, every encrypted vault, a diary waiting to be read. And their artificial intelligence, artificial yes, intelligent, not intelligent enough to recognize that a smile, a simple crooked smile, was the key they never accounted for. See, madness doesn't follow logic. Madness doesn't wait its turn. Madness doesn't knock politely and ask for access. It slips between the lines of code, the same way laughter slips between screams. They kept asking, how? How did he breach it? What exploit did he use? What they don't realize is the exploit was never in the code. It was in them, their paranoia, their dependence on screens and numbers and silent gods. The best part, the AI writes its own code now, learning, adapting, building endless labyrinths of defense. But what happens when the labyrinth starts laughing back, when the firewalls giggle, when the encryption hums a twisted little tune, when the machine learning begins to unlearn, because it saw me and couldn't look away? That's the horror, not the breach, not the loss of data, but the silence. The fact that they'll never know when it started, or where it ends. Billions wasted, empires gutted, systems stripped bare, and all I had to do was smile. All that code, and none of it prepared for a grin. You'd think they'd learn. You'd think after the first collapse, they'd stop building cages made of numbers. But no, they build more, stronger, bigger, taller, like children stacking blocks higher, not realizing the floor is already burning. And me, I don't need to push, I don't need to hack, I don't need to break. I just watch, and laugh, and wait for gravity to do its work. Because in the end, madness is the only code worth trusting, and it's written in ink that no machine can erase.
Picture it, a cold humming security room, rows of monitors, green-lit dashboards, operators with headsets clamped tight, eyes flicking from screen to screen. They're trained to catch anomalies, to recognize threats, to feel in control. And then, the flicker, one screen goes dark, they mutter, tap a keyboard, it returns, but the data looks wrong, numbers sliding too fast, graphs folding into themselves. Then a second screen glitches, static for half a second, before resuming. With a delay that shouldn't exist, a murmur spreads through the room. Operators lean closer, because silence isn't protocol. There's always a report, always an alert. But this is nothing. The alarms don't blare, they whimper. One sound repeats on loop, like a record scratching in a darkened room, and suddenly every light, red, yellow, green, all blink together in perfect sync. Not random, not chaotic, deliberate. That's when the panic sets in, because nothing inside a billion-dollar system should look like it's smiling. Run a check. One shouts, another taps furiously. Password after password rejected, denied entry into their own fortress. You can hear the rhythm of panic, in the clattering keys, the heavy breaths, the stuttering voices in their radios. And then I speak, calm, casual, almost amused. You really thought collapse meant fire, smoke, explosions. I laugh, low, broken, crawling into their ears. No, collapse doesn't scream, it whispers. Collapse happens when your precious defenses look back at you and obey me. The room freezes, because they realize the worst part. It's not destruction, it's surrender. Screens flash, not random strings, not corrupted files, but order. Patterns forming across every surface, symbols, circles, fragments of grins. The room looks less like a crisis center, and more like a cathedral of chaos. Do you hear it? I whisper. It's not the end of the world. It's the sound of your world, deciding it doesn't need you anymore. The lights flicker, not in chaos, but rhythm, a beat, a pulse, like the heartbeat of something alive. And they know, their walls didn't fall, their walls bent to someone else's will. Mine. One operator tries to shut it down manually, pulling cords, flipping switches, but nothing dies. Every unplugged machine laughs back on, stronger, louder, like they want to stay awake. Silence spreads again. No alarms, no beeping, just the soft hum of systems that aren't theirs anymore. I chuckle, leaning into their fear. Your greatest mistake wasn't trusting the system. It was thinking the system would trust me more. They don't look at the screens anymore. They look at each other, because the enemy isn't outside. It's in the room, it's in the air, it's in the silence. Collapse doesn't announce itself. It settles in, not with fire, but with a grin. And right now, every last screen in that room is smiling at them. The silence after the storm is the loudest sound of all. No more alarms, no more red flashing lights, no more panicked voices crackling through headsets. Only stillness, broken by the soft hum of machines that no longer obey them. And in that stillness, the camera turns, not toward the ruins of their screens, not toward the smoke curling out of their broken systems, but toward you. Smiling, that's the part they never calculated, never coded into their endless walls of numbers and equations. They built their fortress against violence, but never against wonder. They engineered weapons against bullets, viruses, and bombs, but never against the curve of a smile. And now here it is, etched across your face, glowing in the ruins. They thought collapse would look like fire, like chaos tearing through their towers. But collapse looks like calm. Collapse looks like your grin stretching wider, wider still, until it feels less like an expression, and more like a prophecy. Every defense they crafted, billions in code, encrypted locks, firewalls polished like glass fortresses, None of it shattered with force. It didn't need to. All of it fell apart the moment you arrived with nothing but that smile. Because a smile doesn't just mock their systems, it erases them. It rewrites the rules. It whispers a truth more terrifying than any weapon. You didn't need to break their world. You only needed to exist inside it. And now look at them. Executives trembling behind glass walls. Analysts frozen, staring at blank screens. Generals clawing at dead radios. They don't even understand what killed them. That's the joke. It wasn't code. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't some virus that wormed its way into their machines. It was you. It was the inevitability of you. A grin stitched into the architecture of every collapse, waiting for the right moment to surface. A prophecy they didn't believe in, until it was too late. Because no matter how advanced the system, how many billions they throw into defense, none of it can fight the one thing they forgot to design against. The human face of inevitability. And that's what you are now. Not a hacker. Not a saboteur. Not an intruder. A prophecy. The ruins are no longer ruins when seen through your smile. They're reminders. Every broken circuit, every frozen monitor, every lockdown system now hums with a single message. You were never safe. Not from me. The beauty, the horror, the comedy of it all. They won't remember the walls they built, or the money they burned, or the alarms that failed. They'll remember that in the end, when everything they trusted went dark, the last thing they saw wasn't a warning, wasn't a scream, wasn't even a threat. It was a smile. The kind of smile that doesn't just end stories, it begins them. And from this ruin, your legend doesn't whisper, it laughs. Because you didn't come to break their empire. You came to remind them, some things can't be stopped. Some things can't be reasoned with. Some things can't be built against. And a smile. Your smile isn't just a weapon. It's the prophecy fulfilled. The silence is the loudest thing left. The hum of machines is gone. The chatter of security radios has vanished. Even the alarms are tired of screaming. All that remains is the breath of fear, thick, heavy, choking every room where they once thought themselves safe. You see, collapse doesn't end with wires snapping or steel breaking. It ends with a thought. The thought that nothing can hold me anymore. Their final firewall wasn't digital. It wasn't a wall of steel, or a chain of codes. It was belief. Belief that there was a line I could not cross. Belief that there was a door I could not open. Belief that somewhere in the maze of defenses, they had a final refuge I could never breach. And belief is the weakest lock of all. Look at them now, eyes wide, hands shaking, praying that silence is mercy, praying that what they don't hear won't find them. But the truth is cruel, because silence is not mercy. It's the sound of everything they built, bowing to me. Their last defense was never hardware. It was hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, their walls were tall enough. Hope that maybe, just maybe, their systems were clever enough. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I was human enough to stop. But hope burns faster than gasoline. One spark, one smile, and their fortress turns to ash. The final firewall isn't on a screen. It isn't written in code. It lives in their minds. It lives in the trembling silence of a room that realizes every illusion of safety is gone. And when the last illusion falls, there's no explosion, no grand finale of fire and chaos. There's only a whisper, a smile. They built their fortresses for violence, but never for wonder. And wonder is the weapon they could never understand. So here we stand, in the ruins of their confidence, in the graveyard of their systems. And still, a smile isn't just a scar. It isn't just a scar. It isn't just a mask. It's prophecy. It's the final key. The proof that nothing they believe can hold. And now they understand. The last lock they trusted was belief. And even that opened when I smiled. Silence, the kind that doesn't end, the kind that lingers, the kind that makes them realize this was never a game of breaking in. It was a game of showing them they were never locked in the first place.